and we are back. Episode 2, Matthew. Episode 2.
We're back after a month-long break.
It is a month-long break. A month-long break for everyone else and a month-long break for us as well, because we have been enjoying the holidays. Although you're not enjoying them, you look in holiday mode, but I brought Guinness this week and you have a cup of tea by the looks of it.
I am on a Red Bush, a decaffeinated tea. That's how hardcore I'm going this evening.
I'm well and truly into summer mode. So we've been doing the garden up recently. We've got pergolas, we've got planters. I've been in full Bob the Builder mode and just enjoying the sunshine. We had a gorgeous week last week here in the UK. How about you? What have you been up to?
Traveling a lot. Managed to get a lot in the summer. Went up to the mountains. I posted about online. I randomly helped my parents-in-law run a cat show in the Transylvanian mountains, which was a new experience. Then off to the beach, back to the UK. I've just been in the UK. I've just been to my sister's wedding. And then now back in Romania, back to work next week. I've got 2 days in next week. And then the week after CPD and staff start. So it's hurtling towards me.
Oh, I know. That dreaded last couple of weeks seems to sort of fly by. But I want to just reminisce on when we last saw each other, because we do have updates, because this episode is called Winners Are Grinners. And Matthew, I see you grinning quite hard there.
I'm grinning. For everyone who's listening on Spotify, I'm grinning.
Oh, yeah. If you're not watching online.
If you're not, also, I should have said when there was a pause, I was waving at my Hawaiian shirt earlier on, if you're listening only audio only, because it wouldn't have made any sense.
So you are officially, what was your award for? This was from the
AI Pioneer.
Award. Pioneer,
AI
that's
Pioneer
it.
was my award. It's a nice term, Pioneer.
It's a lovely word, and it very well deserved. So
Thank you
done
very
to
much.
you, sir. Very, very well deserved. Unfortunately, we didn't win our award. We are highly commended, but it was a great group to be in. And like I said, the category we were, myself and Ben, over the moon with for most innovative project. So we were really happy just to be there. But all in all, it was a fantastic night.
It was an awesome night. So very much thank you to Ben and Stephen for putting on. It was like an awesome evening. Again, it was mainly really cool to meet pretty much everyone I've met online, like 90% of the people I've met online in one room. It was really cool.
Yeah, and that's it. It really was a sort of joining of minds and people. And I love that there was companies there as well. Actually, it was really nice for teachers and leaders to get to know some of these people who are from industry still. So there was people like Canva were there, quizzes were there, net support with Al Kingsley. There were so many really cool, influential people who are very public in what they do and able to actually get everyone together was a real big event. So yeah, like you said, to Ben and Steve, superb work and a really good night for all, I think. We enjoyed ourselves. But we're not going to talk for too much longer because we do have a guest this week. And I'm going to have to probably edit this bit because Trudi hasn't come back in. So she's not in the lobby for me to...
I think you should leave it in to show we'll air everything, warts and all.
We can do, yeah. I'm just going to...
By the time we get to the 100th episode, which is apparently we need to do 100 episodes and then we've made it. I'll blow my nose while we're waiting.
Go for it. Now that I am leaving in, you've blown your nose. Hopefully this works in a smooth transition. And... here she is. Welcome.
Hello.
How are we doing?
Yeah, good, thank you. I don't think I'd clicked the right button, so I was just sitting there like Billy No Mates for a while.
Yeah, sorry about that. That's probably us just being bad podcast hosts, unfortunately. we haven't quite got the knack of it yet, but we're aiming to improve on that.
This is the danger of being our first guest. We just haven't worked to figure out how to use it properly.
That's all right. Well, there's always after editing, isn't there? There's always post editing.
Yeah, what no one else knows is we've just cut the last sort of 20 minutes out. So of us faffing with controls. But Trudi Barrow, you are a now ex-teacher.
Yes.
Having only just left the classroom. But we want to dig into a little bit about what you have been doing, your history, what you're up to at the moment, and what you're doing in the future a little bit, is what we're going to touch on today. So first of all, we just want to have a little bit about you. Tell us who you are.
Okay, well, I'm Trudi. As Aaron said, I left the classroom a couple of weeks ago where I was working as a design and technology teacher at Sandringham School, which is a state comprehensive in St Albans in the UK. I have for the last year been working 1 day a week as a national design and technology advisor for an organisation called CLEAPSS. And I am now transitioning into taking more hours on with CLEAPSS. I've also taken a deep dive for the last year and a half to 2 years in AI in education, as many people have. But I have been specifically focused on design education and visual AI tools and AI to enhance design education specifically. So that's who I am. I originally had a background in theatre design and worked at the National Theatre in the UK and trained at RADA. And then I did my NQT at Sandringham School, became head of DT at Kensington Aldridge Academy, and then had a bit of a career gap where I worked freelance for the Design Museum and the National Theatre again, had 2 babies, and then went back to Sandringham School as a part-time design technology teacher, but did some freelance things on the side alongside that, and that's where I am now, having just left that job to go and work at CLEAPSS and freelance in AI and VR and XR, and we'll talk about that later.
Yeah, VR we definitely want to sort of dig into later on, but I suppose we want to sort of ask you, because I know you've done a fantastic podcast with the DT Association, so that's something we have in common, you and me as DT teachers, because we first met actually at Disrupted, didn't we? And it was EdTech that brought us together originally.
Yeah, actually, it was Disrupted. Yeah, that's a good point. I'd forgotten that.
And I just
Yes,
remember
it was
that now. It was
EdTech.
a little while ago. Yeah, so
And
because
then,
that's my first question to you, I suppose, is when did you really get that EdTech bug? What was it that sort of got you on the technology train?
so before I became a teacher, I worked in the theatre, and I was always very interested in cutting edge technology for theatre before I became a teacher. So I was always sort of the theatre designer who wanted to experiment with projection and video in the shows that I was doing. So I was always very interested in technology anyway. And then when I left the theatre and became a teacher, which is a whole story in itself, but I'm from a teacher background, so it was an inevitability really that I became a teacher at some point, kind of caught up with me. When I became a teacher, I was lucky enough to work at Sandringham School as my NQT school, and they had a bring your own device program. They were one of the first schools in the country to do that, and they were making partnerships with Google pretty quickly. So they were one of the first Google schools, and I was an advocate of that and got really involved in it. And again, became sort of a subject specialist because a lot of EdTech advisors were focusing on pedagogical approaches to do with maths and science and English and history, geography, etc. And I was sort of advocating for practical use cases for the practical subjects and creative use cases for the arts. So I was doing that quite quickly, actually, in my teaching career.
Brilliant. Can you remember what it was, the first real sort of hook? So I'll give you an example for me. I remember we had at uni, we had a guy called Adam Levo come in, and he's a fantastic trainer. He actually works over in the Middle East now. And he showed us Google Classroom for the first time. And I
Mm-hmm.
just remember seeing that and that being a thing for me of, wow, that's going to really switch how you can do flip learning, how you can actually interact and give out resources and so on. I just remember that being a thing for me. Can you remember what the first sort of real hook for you was within sort of the education space?
Um, Because I think for me it predated education, because I was using computer aided design all the time professionally as a designer, and I was photoshopping everything, and using Photoshop as sort of my third limb at one point, doing everything. So when I became a teacher, it was sort of almost like an expectation of, well, obviously we're going to be using digital tools, aren't we? Because it's 20 whatever it was when I started being a teacher, and that we won't say that because it'll show old now. And I sort of wanted to integrate it into my teaching practice the way I had into my design practice. But I was really lucky that my NQT school was was using Google Classroom, and was or every child in the classroom had their own device, so we could play. So when the pandemic hit in 2020, we sort of felt like we had a bit of a head start. We were already using interactive tools. We were already using quizzing tools and Google Suite. But then it sort of expedited our abilities by going completely remote. And I think in 2020 there was a bit of a jump start. The school that I was at went completely remote from day one and had an expectation that all students would log in. Now, I should say that it is quite a middle class area. It's a state school, but it's a middle class area. So, it didn't have some of the issues that my previous school, which was an inner city school, would have had at that time. But it definitely did jumpstart things. And plus, I was a big fan of things like Padlet, which I know I've talked about a lot on LinkedIn, etc. Before AI came along, and then when these tools started to integrate AI, I then got even more excited. So yeah, hope that answers that question.
Absolutely. I think, like you said, it's almost sort of seen that technology and DT are really closely linked. So, and that sort of relationship is almost just symbiotic, especially now in the sort of manufacturing techniques that there are and stuff. How do you sort of find you pass that on to your students? Is that a big part of your practice now? Or like you said, has that just always been the case? You've just always brought that through?
I think I do think that design and technology has a responsibility to be up to date with technology, because it's in our name. We are design and technology. I think that design creates technology and technology can enhance design. They're intrinsically linked and always have been. It's a common concept that I discuss a lot, actually. So the misconception, for example, that AI is unprecedented. The speed of advancements could be considered unprecedented, but the actual creation of AI technology has been on the cards for decades and follows on from many, many technological advancements that humanity's made in the past, which have changed the game. So as a design and technology teacher, we talk about that a lot in our lessons. We use the printing press as an example. And I know a lot of EdTech voices have used the printing press as an example, and design technology teachers have been using that as an example of technological change for a while. And both groups would say that it shook up the constructs of society and shifted social norms. And also, the invention of the aeroplane, the car, even the wheel, in regards to making the human sphere smaller. There's always been technological advancements and innovations that have fallen under the sort of the banner of design. And I think that for me, like artificial intelligence and virtual reality are just the next thing. And I don't believe that they are completely unprecedented. I think there's a whole history of design innovation and technological innovation that comes before. And this is just the latest in a line. I do think the speed of change is unprecedented, but I think that I definitely think that for me, design and technology and design are intrinsically linked together.
I just want to ask you a question because I'm a computer science teacher myself, so there's an overlap in some aspects. I got dragged into teaching some D&T back in my old school. They're like, you know how to use computers. You can teach Google SketchUp, I think it was back in the day.
Oh, yeah,
It was Google SketchUp. Yeah. A question about robotics, and I know there's quite a little bits of robotics in the D&T curriculum, and that's like such a huge, like emerging field with like looking like robotic. You can get a robot for like 16 grand or something, they're saying. that can help you around your house. So what kind of robotics elements are in the D&T curriculum that you guys, maybe for both of you guys, what you include?
So a lot of schools, so speaking as sort of like a national D&T advisor, a lot of schools are into VEX robotics, and there are a lot of teachers are taking students off to VEX robotics competitions all over the world. I've noticed with sort of my CLEAPSS hat on, looking at the national picture, that robotics often features in independent school curriculums more than it does in state school curriculums for the obvious price tag reasons. But also robotics can feature all the way down to primary level. In fact, coincidentally, my two children are upstairs with two of their friends currently playing with Botley, which is a learning robot where they're making it track a line and they're all squealing and laughing up there. So it can, robotics can be introduced to students as young as 5 or 6. As Aaron's wife might know, because I've just found out she's a primary school teacher. So I think that robotics is really important, but like you say, Matt, it does span across both our subjects. And I think one thing that I'm passionate about, which I know that you both are too, is cross-curricular links and not having subjects as complete islands, and identifying that I'm very passionate about design and technology, but that doesn't mean that I'm going to keep all of these elements to my subject. I would want to work with computer science teachers, work with art teachers, work with maths teachers, work with any of our next door neighbours of subject overlap subjects to give the students the very, very best learning opportunities. So I think where there's collaboration between subjects, that's where some magic can happen.
No, definitely. And I think
Yeah, no, I agree.
moving now on to, so you go, Aaron.
No, I was just about to say, I love that. We hadn't planned to talk about that, but that cross-pollination and the real, what I would call value of cross-curricular, whereas I've seen it in Sweden, where it's just very natural. It's built into the curriculum that subjects are sort of batched together. So they will do one big project as an assessment for those 3 subjects. I remember the one example I saw, it was history, art and drama were put together. So they had the content of history and the timeline of Henry VIII. It wasn't for them. I can't remember what they were doing. It was something more Swedish. But it was to do with the timeline of this kind of story and some of their history. And that was the art project, was to draw and sketch out this timeline. So they'd had history lessons for the content. The assessment was the actual timeline they put together. And it was a big A0 kind of sheet. It was huge, of what they had to do and make it all look pretty. And they worked in groups collaboratively, and they got a grade together as a group as well. And then they would go and do a drama piece on it as well, of the big events and what happened and so on. And that was just natural. They would do that and batch those together. But it just seems like such a foreign idea to us here, especially in the UK, in our sort of system. I know, Matt, you're British curriculum, aren't you?
Yeah, we do the British curriculum, but we have probably a little bit more flexibility. We still inspect it under the same standards, but it's a little bit different overseas. You've got a little bit more of a flexibility, let's say, than Ofsted.
So how truly would you like to see the curriculum sort of be more cross-curricular? What would be your sort of utopia that you'd like to see?
Yeah, I think what you just said would be a utopia, wouldn't it? For it to be a bit more cross-curricular, to give teachers time, which I know is time is being the currency in education that everybody really, really seeks. But I think to give teachers time to sit with their colleagues from other departments and do curriculum planning and mapping across departments. So I don't know about you, Aaron, but I've often stood in front of my GCSE product design class and just about to do a lesson on, sustainability. And I've started to talk about, jacket gases or carbon footprint or something. And they've gone, oh, miss, we did this in chemistry last week, or we did this in geography 2 weeks ago, and you're repeating stuff we've already done. And I think, well, that's on me. I should have made the effort to go and find out when you were doing this in your other subjects, but I just haven't had time to even use the bathroom. So how am I going to have time to walk across campus to talk to somebody in geography or send them an email about this, which is, low priority, but it should be higher priority. But it can't be because of all the other commitments and time restraints. So a utopia would be giving teachers time to make those connections and do some curriculum mapping that is whole school curriculum mapping, not just subject by subject, department by department curriculum maps, but saying, this is the DT curriculum map. How does it look compared to the chemistry curriculum map? And when they learn about crude oil, how does that link to when they're doing plastics in design and technology? And when they're learning about robotics and computer science, how does that link to when they're doing computer science in design and technology, and vice versa? And when do they do it first? And how and where can we save time by referencing what they've done in their other subjects? And I know some amazing schools and independent schools and international schools might have a little bit more flex on that and are probably already doing it. And I know it sounds completely common sense and obvious that we should be doing it as educators, but in the majority of state schools, there just isn't time to have that ability to have that joined up thinking. And I think it's a real shame. So that would be my dream utopia.
No, I agree, because
Yeah,
it's something that was.
Sorry, go on, Matt. Sorry,
It's something for us. It was a priority for us last academic year, but it's taken us about an academic year of just sitting with the heads of department trying to figure out how we're going to make it work. So like next year, we've got a nice plan to make it happen, but it's time. Like we went in with all great things, like saying we're going to make it happen last year, but there's always priorities, there's always things pressing, and it was strangely more complicated than we thought it'd be, trying to get all these subjects together because they've never really worked together before. So it took us a good 9 months to figure out how we're going to make that work. And then now next year going in, we should have a good roadmap for that, hopefully.
Yeah.
And it's great to hear that that's kind of happening as well. I just want to go back to sort of the AI. You touched on it, and it's probably going to be more of a theme because that's a lot of what you're doing at the moment alongside your work with CLEAPSS and so on.
Mm-hmm.
So sort of how are you using AI within DT, also outside of that, and what is it you're doing at the moment around that space?
So I have spent the last year and a half, nearly 2 years now, playing. And I do say that with a lot of respect for the concept of play within learning. And I've been playing with all sorts of different tools, but with my passion for my subject at the forefront. So I have been actively following big voices in AI, including Matt. Just blow some lovely magical hot air all over you now. But yeah, so I have been following people and seeing what people have done and reading about it and watching things and attending webinars, and then sort of going, okay, well, how does that apply to DT? How does that work for the design education specifically? So I think that, AI, and I've led training in ran webinars and trained school SLTs on how to use AI whole school, and I've always said to them, there are lots of different things that we can look at. There's teacher workload reduction, and augmenting simple tasks for teachers. There's pedagogical approaches for students and using it with students in lessons, and then there's all the SEND tools that can differentiate easier, can enfranchise certain students that might have felt disenfranchised before. And talking of disenfranchisement, it's not a word. We can also think about school refusers and students with behaviour difficulties. So there's loads of whole school AI things, but I've sort of mapped them out when I've talked to school leaders and said, but there's another one, and that's giving opportunities for subject-specific AI investigations, and making sure that when we introduce AI at a whole school level, we do talk about all of these big tools that can help with planning or can help in lessons, but we also say, the history teacher might specifically want this, or the geography teacher might specifically want this. And for me, there are some amazing visual tools. There are some amazing CAD tools, sketch tools. I've been talking about Newark AI a lot on LinkedIn recently, and the benefits for learning within design or within art or within creative subjects. So I think that that's something that I've really, really focused on, is specifically how the subject-specific design and creative subjects can use AI creatively. I know there's a debate about whether it can, remove creativity, and maybe that's a whole other conversation. But I think if used wisely and if taught with ethics in mind and with with safety in mind, which is with my CLEAPSS hat on, that's a lot of what I've been looking at within AI. Then it can really, really enhance the student's experience. And also, when I say enhance the student's experience, I also mean by giving their teachers a bit of a break by lowering their workload and therefore giving them, brighter, fresher, less knackered teachers. That is also giving the students opportunities through AI, isn't it? So there's tons, and I've gone down a rabbit hole, as I know both of you have too, playing with this stuff and learning and experimenting and getting really into it. And I think, when you asked me about real life outside of the classroom and outside of education, I've been using it as we all have. I've been, asking text to text to, proofread my work or help me write things or construct pieces of writing. I've used dictaphone apps, been driving in the car and had an idea and used Otter AI to write some notes for me and all those sort of things, which I think, for creative people, I don't know about you guys, but sometimes I have my best thoughts at the worst possible moment. I'm driving, I can't write this down, or I'm in the shower, where's the pen? So it's nice to be able to have AI be an assistant in those situations. But also, as I've mentioned, I've got 2 kids, so they have been using it with me. I will say with me sitting right next to them. I will say that. But we've been playing. You might have seen on LinkedIn, they've been making monsters with New Arc, and they've been making rocket ships. And my little boy went to town on taking all his favourite Marvel characters and turning them into high definition trains using Midjourney with me. And I've noticed just through playing with them, the learning opportunities, their oracy skills that they're using while they're trying to write a prompt, trying to dictate maybe a prompt in my 5-year-old's case, or very slowly type the prompt in my 7-year-old's case. The oracy opportunities, the literacy opportunities, the vocabulary extension that my little girl had the night that she tried to describe the Magic Faraway Tree characters. When we were making a virtual learning environment, which I think you might have seen. And also I totally ripped off Matt's idea anyway, from his, was it your Industrial Revolution thing link? I saw that and went,
yeah, the early thing link that I made, yeah.
Yeah. So I saw your early thing
link,
and then and this is exactly, this is what we do, isn't it? We see something someone does and go, oh, well, that's great. And that's a fantastic use case for history. Now what can I do for DT? So I made a
I saw your really you made that really nice revision world
revision.
that I
Yeah,
saw
so
towards the end of the year. That was really nice.
I had a load of disgruntled, predominantly lads who, again, from a middle class area, a lot of them got headsets for Christmas the year before. And I thought, well, how can I, as Melissa McBride would say, meet them where they are? So I created this revision room using the Thing Link method that you talked about. And then in my personal life, I then was reading my daughter The Magic Faraway Tree, and we made a Magic Faraway Tree world together. And so I think, the other thing that I really enjoy about AI is that I've used it with my 5-year-old, but I've used it with my 18-year-old product design students. And I think that there are opportunities, if used correctly, for learning opportunities and enhancing pedagogy throughout the education system. I don't think it's just for secondary, I don't think it's just for primary. And I also think, I'm on a rant now, I'll slow down in a second. I also think it's really
you keep going.
You go.
I think it's really, really important that it's just a tool. And I think that it's got to be a headline, is that AI is another tool. It is not going to replace teachers. It is not going to erase teachers. It is another weapon in our arsenal, as it were. And actually, how we use it is part of our ability as educators to use it correctly and to use it innovatively. So, for example, using the Padlet AI as a warm-up activity is great. and getting the whole class to create little generated images in real time on the board behind me in lessons was fantastic for engagement, fantastic for motivation. But then I took it a step further, and with an older class, I thought, well, okay, here's a learning objective where I want to teach them. And I know Aaron knows this story because I told you recently, but my learning objective is to teach them all ergonomics and anthropometrics, and how can I do that, and how can I create a resource for that. So I'll create the resource live in the lesson by using the Padlet AI function, and get them all to make a product image using a prompt, and then we'll turn off we'll hide the prompts, and we'll turn off attribution, and they'll all be anonymous, and we'll use that as a resource for peer discussion, for think, pair, share, for class discussion, for unpicking who the targets markets were, discussing the ergonomics, discussing the anthropometrics. So my pedagogy, as it were, was still the same. It was just given this sort of turbocharged boost, and given this this new lease of life that was also engaging and motivating for the students through doing it this way. I could have spent the first 10 minutes getting them all to draw a little picture, and then getting them all to put post-its on a board, and then getting the whole class around and looking at the board and then discussing it, and that would have taken 25 minutes. But instead I used Padlet and I used AI, because the actual drawing was not the purpose of the learning. The analysis after the creation was the purpose of the learning. So we could skip that bit and use AI for that bit, and then get to the core learning, which was the analysis afterwards. And that took 10 minutes. So more time for other things. So I'm a big fan, but I do think that the big caveat is teachers still need to think for themselves and use this stuff creatively, and use these tools as tools. And that I really don't have the fear that we're all going to be replaced. I think certain elements of education could potentially be replaced. And I think that a lot of it is going to be helped. Your revision, having a chatbot to talk to quiz you on a certain topic, brilliant. I wish I'd had that when I was doing my GCSEs. But at the same time, I still want difficult concepts explained to me by a real person, drawing diagrams in real time to try and talk to me about how things work. So I don't know, maybe that's naive. What do you think?
For us, I think the same as you. I think that automation in schools, I've seen loads of things on LinkedIn like, oh, you can automate this and like get so many comments and things, but schools are like messy places. Like the reason I wanted to be a teacher is I like the fact that every day is different, and you can't automate difference. Like, it has to be the same. So I think that is one of those areas where schools like probably the most human place you could possibly be. I think that there's
exactly.
so many different thousands of people interacting with each other of all different ages. And I think deploying the AI, if you can, to automate things that teachers that waste time, or to optimize even your lesson, to say, oh, they don't need to draw it, they can use this tool, which will save us time to do these other things. But that's still you as a teacher thinking through your learning objectives and trying to get the most streamlined way to the point. And that's a really, really cool, really great example you shared.
Yeah, and I think that was a great example of what I talk about with, is it replication or is it innovation? And you've just given the prime example of that. Are you just replicating through technology something you would already do? Like, are you just putting a worksheet online now? There's no real benefit to it as such. If you're just going to do that, yes, you brought it online, yes, you've used technology, but it's not really gained you anything. But for me, I think the real example is the thing link of what you put together that both of you've done. You've done your own little versions, but I love the one that you put together, Trudi, and we'll put it in a link to it in the show notes as well, so everyone can have a look for themselves, because you use so many different elements of AI to build that whole world. To bring it together of ThingLink online. So it was a VR virtual experience that you can dive into. You've made your own one. The images were AI. Some of the text in there was AI, there was voice then generated, there was DID in there as well. So there's so many different elements that you just wouldn't have been able to do before as a teacher to make this whole immersive world. And I think whenever people ask for, well, why should I? Then really, if you build that world good enough, that is a reusable resource that can last you for years and years and will give hours and hours of, like I said, revision to your students, give them a chance to actually learn some new content, do some flip learning. When you link it to pedagogy and, like you said, learning objectives, there's absolutely no reason why we shouldn't be playing. I love the word that you say there, play, because that's what I say all three of us have only ever done, is to really dig into something and give it a go. And if it's no good, we've chucked it away. There's plenty of stuff I haven't used.
I think, sorry to interrupt you. I was just saying that, when I use the word play, and I do use it with like a certain reverence for the concept of play, because I think that, in design and technology and problem solving, that's how we figure things out and that's how we learn. So I know that that's something that a lot of people might overlook, is that the concept of play being like one of the ultimate educational valuable sources, especially for young children. So yeah, when I say I'm playing, I really mean it in its like purest sense of, and I respect the notion of play.
And do you sort of like go down the Montessori route with that as such, of playing with it to explore?
I just think that, coming from a theatre design background as well, if I had a brief that would have been a script and would have been what the director wanted, and I would have had the constraints, which would have been the empty model box in front of me, and I had to design a set for that venue. The best thing to do would be to, read it, understand it, and then play. Get a roll of masking tape, stick it about, get some blue tack, stick it around, see what happens, just take some photos, and that through that playing, you came up with some design ideas. And I often say to students, in the initial design stage, play with it. You do graffiti and then see what shapes come out. And then have a blob of Play-Doh and play with it and see what shapes you get. And then you can start to hone down and be analytical and be evaluative and be critical. But at the initial stages, let's just throw everything up in the air and have fun and play with this, and then see what happens. And I think that's important for the exploration of AI. As long as it's done safely, play with it, see what happens. That's the only way of knowing. And I know that we've all come up against this, people that say, "Oh, I don't like artificial intelligence," and I say, "Well, have you ever used it? Have you ever had to play with it?" And they've said, "No, I wouldn't." And I think, well, don't have an opinion unless you want to have a go first, and then tell me if you don't see the value. So I think, yeah, play important.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more with you. We've just been rewatching Stranger Things recently as well, and you've got the season 4. You got the hippie guy who keeps trying to get everyone to eat pineapple on pizza, and he keeps saying "try before you deny."
Yeah, exactly.
We might change the title of this episode to "Try Before You Deny." I think we had one last question, Matt, that we haven't covered, which is your last one. If you wanted to dig in,
what was my last question? I can't see it. What was my last question? Oh yeah, VR experiment. We've been over VR experiments. Yeah. I just wanted to look back quickly and just say that I think what you touched upon about images and literacy and oracy, like image generation AI, I think that's one of the tricks that some people are missing. Like, it's such a powerful tool. We've used it a couple of times in English lessons, and it's so great for kids to try to describe what's in their heads, and it doesn't appear that way, and then they have to go back and try to figure out the words to make it come out the way that they want it to, and how fast you can iterate it. It's such a cool use case.
Yeah, so I've seen people.
Do you want to ask the last question, Aaron? Because I'm.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just getting our last section up and ready.
There they are. Those questions, the ones you deleted from the sheet to make me look like an idiot.
No, not them ones. No, we're coming on to those ones. They're our surprise ones that I've just chucked in now. But I think this is something you put into like our little show notes. So me and Matt are working from opposite ends of the world, so everything we do is online. But I am a big believer of this as well, is like a YouTube warrior. And so how people have access to information through technology now, whether that's on YouTube, whether that's through Reddit and so on, it really does kind of bleed into that territory of DT, and especially with AI now and so on. So how do you think sort of that is affecting the space? How is that? Is it expanding upon the pool that we can dip from different materials and disciplines, or actually is it muddying the waters a little bit for a DT teacher?
So this question is about how the technological advances and social media and everything influence the classroom and design technology. Is that right?
Yeah. Should we all be like digging our own swimming pool in the mud with a bit of bamboo?
Yeah. Okay.
Like
So I understand.
online?
So I've got a couple of things that I want to say about this. So I think that one thing is that a lot of educators, current practicing teachers, might poo-poo the latest fad. So I've heard a lot of teachers saying, "Oh, TikTok's a waste of time, a waste of space," and I think, well, you might think that, but all of the people that you are providing a service to every day, the majority of them are on TikTok a lot. So, having an appreciation for, again, meet them where they are. I love that phrase, Melissa's phrase of trying to understand our students and understand the technologies that they come up with, that they are using in their everyday life, and talking to them in a way that they understand the learning objectives and the contexts, but without sort of this like arrogance that we get as old people, to say that's not going to last, or that's not going to work. Our educators did it to us when they said, "Oh, mobile phones are not going to kick off, and the internet's not going to last. It's just a fad," or loads of examples. And I think it's important that educators stay on top of current changes. I also think that TikTok and Instagram stories and Facebook stories and etc. have meant, scientifically proven that teenagers' attention spans have got shorter. And I know we joke about it, and we might say in the staff room, "Oh God, their attention spans are getting shorter," but it's actually true. So that means that CPD for teachers should be, how do we use chunking in our pedagogy more effectively? Chunking and short, sharp learning objectives and shorter pieces of information should be at the top of how we are moving pedagogy forward. But it's not necessarily, because we sit back and have this sort of middle-aged arrogance of we know best. So yeah, I think that's important. I also think that in design and technology, there are crazes, there are fads, and they influence what our teenagers and young people come in wanting to design with and wanting to make with. "Oh, miss, can I put a resin streak down the middle of my product because I've seen it on Instagram?" Or, "Can I melt some plastic down because I've seen it on TikTok?" And I think it's important that we stay up to date with that. At CLEAPSS, we try really hard to stay up to date with that, and we write health and safety guidance on the stuff that students are seeing. So we're going to be bringing those two examples are, HDP, for example, has taken over in design and technology schools, shredding their own plastic and collecting bottle tops and then melting them down in panini presses. And social media has had a positive impact on that. But again, like, we're going to be writing guidance on how to use resin safely as it has become really fashionable, and that fashion has come from social media. So there is a direct link to the classroom. I also think that, one thing that we've not mentioned, but is really, really close to everybody's hearts, unless you made of stone, is the environment. And I think that our young people are getting a lot of information about climate change and about sustainability and about the state of the planet, not from school, from socials. And then we have a responsibility to deal with that and to educate on that and to support the positives, and to, address common misconceptions and fake truths, etc. But also to embrace the fact that there are some amazing people out there doing amazing things, and we should be sharing that in the classroom. Brothers Make, for example, are a great example of a Instagram page, I think, who
I think
are
they're YouTube as well. I think
YouTube as
they got
well,
some
and
really
they're
good videos on there.
brilliant videos. And design and technology teachers, a lot of us who I would consider to be open-minded, like you and I, Aaron, hopefully open-minded, although I don't know whether our students would say that. We will get those videos and bring them into our lessons and say, this is what's going on. This is the cutting edge of sustainable product design. Let's do it. Let's have a go. Let's have a play. And I think it's really important to be open-minded. I think there's a massive disconnect between many schools and industry and higher education. And I think if we don't stay on top of what industry and higher education are doing, then that disconnect is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And one way that we stay on top of that is by, using social media, following them, understanding what's going on. And it's so easy to do as well. It's, it's literally in the palm of your hand. So I'm a fan of staying on top of things through those mediums.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think, like I said, for me, YouTube has always been a superb learning tool and has been for years, of the amount of information that people are willing to give away, of what their own experience is, of particularly. So I'm very much into wood workshops and the Americans and the way they put theirs together. And they, like I said, resin tables, YouTube is littered with them all over the shop. But like I said, some of the techniques of what they use over there and stuff. So, I mean, I remember pocket holes just absolutely changing the way I put cabinets together. Like, it was such an easy way compared to doweling it. Like, doweling is stronger, don't get me wrong, and is a better technique, I would say, but it's such a faff when you can just pocket hole it. And there's so many little tips and tricks and stuff that you can.
So many jigs. You see these jigs that come up on these channels and you think, oh my gosh, why did I never think of making a jig like that? That's so obvious. Why didn't I think of that? And then you could use it in your own practical work. I think one thing that I will say that I think is really important is about everything being in moderation. So I'm down in Lyme Regis now on school holidays. We come down here for 6 weeks. And we're really lucky that we've got this little cottage down here. And my kids have, on a rainy day, played Beat Saber on headsets, have 3D printed on the 3D printer I've borrowed from CLEAPSS for the summer, and they've got out their Kiwi kits and done STEM stuff. And I've been a hammer in the design and technology, and they've had lots of screen time on rainy days. But what I think is important to note is that the majority of their time is outside, and that we're a very outdoorsy family. And we like, we'll spend a lot of time on the beach or on a boat, or just digging up fossils on the beach. And I think that there is a misconception, and I think it stems right down into the design and technology community and in all education, that you can either be one or the other. And as a parent and an educator, I think it's really important that we don't shy away from giving students opportunities and kids opportunities to experiment and play with technology. But I also really, really passionately believe that let's get outside, let's go to the beach, let's do swimming, let's climb up that whatever. And I like both. And I think that because I'm always talking about artificial intelligence and VR, and I think that there's this misconception about voices like mine and voices like yours, that because we're talking about those things, we don't do the other things, and that we don't respect the other stuff, which actually to many of us is incredibly important, if not more important. And I think that's sort of started to happen to the design and technology community in a big way. There's a lot of rhetoric around if you are pro artificial intelligence, and I mean, even the way I'm saying it sounds like a political campaign. If you're pro artificial intelligence and pro virtual reality, then you must be anti woodwork and anti workshops. And I don't see myself like that, even though I am talking about the immersive revision room I made or the mid-journey experience that my 5-year-old had. I just don't see myself like that. And I know, Aaron, you don't either. And I think that this is a common misconception that this polarization, that if we're talking about AI and VR, we must be really against talking about jigs, for example, which we just did. And I think that's a real shame. And I think that a lot of that comes from fear from many people in the community who are fearful of some of the new technologies, and therefore paint out some of the voices like ours as being derogatory and anti-traditional skill, when we're not anti-traditional skill at all. We're just, everything is in moderation, and let's give our kids and students and young people opportunities to have a huge arsenal of weapons that they can go and solve problems with in the future.
I'll add to that. I think it's fear, and I always say this: fear, but also ego. Of you get in your own way sometimes. Of, well, I've spent years learning how to draw, and now all of a sudden AI can do that for me. Like, and it just doesn't seem fair, and all that, and this stuff, and you can get caught up in your own rhetoric, like you said, of I'm not even going to try it, I'm not even going to go along with it, and I think that's a real shame. And it actually, I would say the people who are leading on this is testament to their experience, because they're so comfortable with the bog standard of what you would expect of a teacher. They've got their pedagogy down, they've got their behavior down, they've got so much already in place that actually they've now got some capacity to learn something new, and there's a bit more innovative, and that takes up a bit more of your mental capacity to learn and to play with, again using that word play, to actually just go and experiment and try something different and see where the benefits are, where the pitfalls are. I mean, it's something I keep saying I'm going to do, and I know lots more people are doing it, is some actual research into it, setting some measures of what they're going to try out, because again, my play genuinely is just play, and it's all just conjecture and my own thoughts. But actually I'd like to put something a bit more data driven to it and show some impact, show a little bit of this, and that's something I want to personally try and do a bit more next year in the future, is actually have some aims of what I'm looking for, because it just brings a bit more value to it, I suppose, for the outside world to see, well, no, I have tried this and I've tried that, and again, like you said, do it in an ethical way where you're not going to be causing any harm to anyone's outcomes, students or teachers otherwise. So I think it's just one of those, of trying to get over that initial speed bump of fear and ego of making more work for yourself for the sake of having that hard work badge, which I hate that people love showing off.
Yeah I think that there is that, like, if I admit that I used AI to help me do this particular task, that must make me an idiot. And you think, well, actually, no, that makes you savvy because you've just used a tool that's available to you to help you to enhance that tool, that to help enhance that task. So, yeah, I agree with you completely. Matt, how do you see it with the sort of a whole school vision of this fear? You must have encountered it.
I think everyone's got their lines. Like for me, I started using it because I'm dyslexic and it helped me proofread. So for me, my relationship with the written word's complicated. So for me, I've got no really qualms about putting text through it and proofreading. Some people in English department are very precious about it being with the language. Art teachers, Mid-Journey, like I showed them a really cool website, was someone had done art from every artist around the world, but I thought it was original art to get inspiration for Mid-Journey, but someone had made all the images on Mid-Journey. So we started using that in class as inspiration. And then, but like, even for me, the day when like the NVIDIA guy came out was like, oh, you won't need to program anymore. And I was like, oh, like I'm a computer scientist. Is this my line? I think everyone's going to butt up against their particular ideas, but I see it like everything else in school. Like it exists. like we have to know what it can do. We know our students are using it, so why at least go on New Arc and see what it can do? At least type something into ChatGPT and see what it can do. At least have some form of awareness. Same for TikTok. Even if you don't like it, go on. And I used TikTok originally, and I deleted it because I was like, this is rubbish. But if you search for certain things, and like search for AI, search for computer science, search for STEM, you can like shift the algorithm to stop giving you like nonsense and actually give you things that are useful to you. So you can proactively shift the algorithm. So that I watch TikTok use it as CPD. And the good thing, looping back to what you said, is I know Instagram and TikTok are now shifting their algorithm to favor longer content. So that might have an impact on how things go. So if you make a video that's over a minute now, you actually get more views and things like that. So that could be a positive in terms of chunking and concentration. That might push things back the other way. And again, a minute's quite a short time, so speak fast when you're teaching.
Yeah, and change chunking from 20 minutes to 3. You got 3 to get that concept across.
I remember though 10 years
right,
ago.
Matt, do you want to see us out?
Oh, sorry.
No, go for it.
No, I was just going to say, I remember like 10 years ago there being that sort of that really trendy plenary of now summarize everything you've learned in 144 characters as you leave, because there's this new amazing thing called Twitter.
The old Twitter plenary.
Yeah. And I think that I do think it's
chili
important we stay up to date.
Don't diss the Nando's thing. I still use the Nando's menu thing.
Yeah.
Do you actually?
Yeah, I love it. My kids love it. I give them the extra, like, differentiate the questions up so they got hot spot. It's like a grid where they pick, they have to pick one from each level and they have to work their way up, which mild, medium, spicy question they're going to answer. I do this with year 13 computer science students. They love it.
Wow, I haven't seen those in years. No. I quite enjoyed it. But again, it's one of those things. It sort of goes around and comes back again at some point, I suppose. Whether it's called the same thing or not, I dare say it'll be something else.
The only thing I had to do is they don't have Nando's in Romania, so I had to spend 10 minutes explaining what Nando's was before we did the task. After I'd done that once, it was fine for the rest of the time.
Just have to remember to leave that explanation slide in for the New Year 7s.
Just Google search Nando's and you'll understand.
Right, Matt, do you want to lead us out? Because we're coming up to sort of that hour mark, hopefully, and we're trying to keep this under so we keep everyone chunked to an hour. And do you want to lead us out with our quick fire questions?
Okay. Do you want me to do all of them, or are we going to do one each?
Yeah, no, go for it. You crack on. I did them last week. This is all you.
Okay. Apple or Android? Trudi? Apple or Android?
Apple.
Microsoft or Google? Microsoft or Google?
Google.
Teams or classrooms? Classroom.
Classroom.
ChatGPT, Gemini or Claude?
Not Claude, the other two.
Favorite bit of EdTech?
Padlet.
Phones or no phones?
Devices.
iPad or Chromebook?
Either. Chromebook, maybe. No, I don't know.
Interactive panel or whiteboard?
Whiteboard.
Visualizer or screen grab?
Screen grab.
And we're done. Quick fire questions over.
That's really interesting. Quick fire. I might change my mind on a couple of those after the fact, though. It's quite tight.
Well, we'll give you a right of reply to come back and change it. But thank you so much for spending the time coming in, speaking with us, Trudi. We've really enjoyed it, and it's been great to sort of just talk a little bit more about sort of the work you're doing and what you're about. So thank you very much for coming along.
Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.
It's been amazing. It's been actually really great to meet you, Trudy. We've been like missing each other for quite some time, so it's been great to catch up.
I know, Matt. I'm a big fan.
And all three of us will be actually together in person in. You're going to have to remind me the date.
15th of February in AI Education 25 in Bucharest. So we'll all be under one roof.
Looking forward to it.
So if you want to come along, tickets are available. So please do grab your tickets online. Again, we'll put it in the show notes for everyone, so you can grab your tickets and come along to one of Europe's I'm going to call it biggest AI conference. Why not?
Cool. I hope to see everyone there. Come. Everyone, fly in. Bucharest is waiting.
Perfect. Right. Thank you very much. And we'll see you next week for another episode, which hopefully will be a little less than a month.
Bye, everybody. Bye-bye.